Hey people, welcome back for another review, a rather punishing review, if you will. This
Yeah,
is
it will be. It will be.
this is Ian here along with Chris, and we're both fresh off checking out the Netflix rendition of Punisher. That's season one, 13 episodes. A lot of beefy episodes too, close to an hour long each, right? About 50 minutes,
Yeah, they
roughly.
range. Some
Yeah,
of them were 59, some of them were 47.
yeah,
The usual.
yeah. And they arced, but yeah, keeping this in context of some of the others we've spoken about. We've had at this point Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist. We've seen them all come together as well, and now we have the next piece to the puzzle, Punisher. Just really going to be delving into this. How does it fit? How does it not fit into this puzzle overall? What we're looking at here as another Marvel work. I mean, I think there's a lot of deviation here from a lot of the formula we've seen with Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and some of the others, and we're gonna dive into that, chopping it up into a non-spoiler portion, and then to really picking the meat and bones a bit more in a spoiler section. But
Yeah.
so I think this is gonna be the briefest one up front. Let's hit the non-spoiler first.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
So here it is, story of Punisher, Frank Castle. Once again,
That's what we're told.
yes, set in NYC. Really, mostly thrown right into his perspective from his life, what he's dealing with post war, post mission, and trying to make sense of really having his family snatched away from him, and really how to go on living life. What hit you with this one in terms of themes, Chris? Do you think it was something like? Did it feel focused? Did it feel too all over the place?
No, it felt very. It didn't feel focused at all. In fact, I would say that you have two different stories going on here. At some point, they made a shift on focus as far as how they were playing these characters, and in particular, Frank Castle.
Mm-hmm.
The character that you get, at least from the first part of the series, is different from the second part, which is a big problem of mine. We should say this right up front. You enjoyed this show.
Mm-hmm.
I did not. So just to give people context and perspective, I was very much looking forward to this show. So I'll say it up front. I'm a bit butthurt. I am a bit butthurt.
How long you been waiting?
Ever since they announced it. I mean,
Yeah.
so probably the better part of a year. Let me put down some groundwork here. This is very typical Netflix Marvel TV show. The formula is very much the same. You've seen it before. How they do this, how they build the character,
Mm-hmm.
how they lay down surrounding characters and things around them. It's very typical Netflix Marvel, which is okay. That's fine. I was not surprised by that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the visuals, directing, it's all very, very typical. So if you're wondering if you're getting anything radically different here, you're not. That being said, what you said where it does deviate, and I agree, this is the least MCU show. If there were references to the movies, I missed every single one of them.
Ditto.
This could have happened elsewhere, in some other world. This could have been a show not about the Punisher, quite frankly. And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
One definite theme in here. There was a lot, and I knew this going in, and I was looking forward to this in large part. Although I disagree with their. Trying to think of the term here. Their result. Result of the biggest theme, which is a lot of conversation in the show about veterans and what they deal with coming back from war. Something I knew that they were going to be doing. John Barenthal had made a lot of mention of this,
Right.
Especially because this character, obviously, he was a Vietnam vet back when they created him decades ago. In this case, he's a veteran from, well, in large part, wars that we still have going on.
Right.
I thought for the most part, execution was the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation of this, I thought, was done really well. It was done with care. It was done with respect, and in that regard, I think they handled that as well as anyone could have.
Right.
The execution of this, the finality of this, I thought was ridiculous in the context of the characters that we have and the outcomes that they could have gone with. Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that going into this review because it is important. They took some pretty heavy topics here in that regard, and I thought they did that well. They handled these characters well. What you see as far as veterans and what they're dealing with post war.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they handled that very well.
Touching on that, that's really through a lens that I think I was seeing a lot of this through. I definitely agree that you're sort of transported out of a Marvel or out of a comic book feel. If anything, it almost felt like I was going CTSI or CSI rather, like 4.0, and then into something else even beyond that. But looking at all the themes, I mean, there's things that are hit here. As we said, post-war, the sense of isolation, post-traumatic stress disorder. Also, there's some interesting questions about family surrogate families or surrogate roles when you have a major figure such as a father figure missing. There's some really strange, twisted ways that's filled in by Frank Castle in this story with one of the main characters he associates with, and when you piece all these together, there's quite a bit I think happening there. It's very busy. There's a lot being said in more of a I'd want to say commentary, but it is. I don't think it's that arrogant. It's an examination, if anything. But still, it's important to note it really feels all that examining really happens outside of comics, outside of Marvel. It's
right.
It's very much a show apart.
Yep. Yes, it is.
So
it definitely is, and that's a damn shame. In fact, this goes into my biggest problem here.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this because they were taking on these topics, and everything. Even the advertising and the trailers looked like they were going to handle this in the context of this being a Marvel show, of this taking place in the MCU.
Right.
And they don't. This feels very similar to me as Legion did, where they're taking on a heavy-handed topic, a very serious topic, one that most of the time you don't see because people are afraid to take it on, and they say they're going to take it on in the context of this world, in the context of these comic book characters, and they don't. It felt very much bait and switch for me.
Comic-wise, though, because and this is another important distinction here. I have zero connection to the Punisher comics. I guess besides some guest appearances I've seen through Spidey throughout the years, or like a few other things, I don't really have much of a base here. Coming into this, what would you have hoped Marvel-wise it could have been based closer to? Anything from Punisher, like main storyline specifically, or like just in general more of a tie to the rest of the Marvel Universe?
There's nothing said as far as I could tell. Like I said before, there's no references to the MCU. You have Karen Page in there again, who's obviously from Daredevil and Defenders, and that was nice. And the interaction between Karen and the Punisher is great. You can actually tell, and you can carry over. Let me say that again. You can tell that she carries over the loss of Daredevil from the Defenders. Spoilers if you haven't seen that yet. Which if you're watching these, I would hope that you have. There's something happens to Daredevil at the end of Defenders. You can definitely tell she's dealing with that, and she's definitely projecting that loss and some feelings towards the Punisher.
Right.
That's good. That's good. What ticks me off, especially because you're talking about the context, and again, this is an opportunity to take something from the MCU and use it in the context of dealing with issues that some veterans have coming back from serving. There's not one single reference about Captain America in this show, which as disconnected as the Punisher is from just about all the other superheroes,
right?
One thing that's come to light in the last decade or so is that Captain America is his idol. And there's not one reference about how he's maybe even pissed about that out of all the things that have happened in the movies, or how there's nothing. And I think that was a huge missed opportunity. Not that I would expect them to dwell on that or dwell on that character, but this is something that we've seen in a lot of the Punisher movies, where they take this idea of the Punisher and they rip him out of where he's from.
Right.
And then it doesn't work.
Fair enough. I mean,
one of the things that makes the Punisher so good is that he's very much like Batman in this way, where he's an average guy. He has no superpowers, but it's what he does and what he's good at in the code that he goes off of, which they do talk about, which is nice. It's that makes him able to get by in the same field with superheroes and supervillains.
Right.
And you don't see that at all.
Now, I do wonder in terms of MCU relation, I do want to step back and look at that a bit, how close to the mark we've been coming back home to the major MCU field. Because, at this point with Marvel Netflix, just from what I've seen, and I know there's reasons why we're not plugging direct links to, hey, Spider-Man Homecoming, hey, Civil War. I get it, there's studio reasonings for that, but it really feels to me that you have, and this is by design, of course, Netflix Marvel sort of contained, and then especially in the New York area, and then what we're dealing with now, MCU, Thanos, everything else. I think even if you take current events completely out of mind, everything that's happening, and try to make those types of links between the two, I suppose that the thing that I've struggled with these is I felt we don't have enough foundation to do that. At least I can't. So when it comes to that plug-in piece for MCU, I think this is the part where I curve a bit on that, because I have a very hard time holding MCU next to it when we feel we don't have much of a platform for it in the first place.
Well, one of the things that bothers me is you have all these skyline shots in this show,
right?
And not one time did you see the Avengers Tower in there. That's disappointing. It's been referenced in previous shows. That's disappointing. Again, you have an opportunity here especially because, again, with Captain America, who right now in the MCU is seen as a fugitive.
Right.
He's a fugitive. They think he's wanted because of what he did with the Sokovia Accords and not following those and such. There's a couple opportunities there for Frank Castle to look upon Captain America and feel justified in the fact that he's going against what the law tells him to do.
Yeah, I think even if you took Sokovia out of account and just sort of looked at that, as you pointed out earlier, that relationship, that is something that could be explored, I think, even outside of the grounds that we have in the Civil War. That's a pretty rich topic, and I think a pretty open-handed link, if you wanted to link any link back into it. And I feel that's Punisher gets swept up so much in its own story. I think those open-handed, giveaways, those handouts, it doesn't grab those when they're there.
Right. Well, and I don't expect them to go much more into maybe even a reference or two, because that's what what's typical with these shows. And again, I'm not saying that they would even have it as a focal point, but the fact that they don't bring it up at all, the fact that at these meetings that the veterans have, no one brings it up. No one brings up the incident. No one, no one brings up any of these things that are going on.
Right.
And it's, I get it. You're trying to tell a story that honestly is more important than than the MCU, which is that the trouble that veterans are having coming back from war and how many of them may feel coming back. But you are in this world,
right?
And you can play to both. It felt very short-sighted, and it felt cheap. Again, and I don't discredit what they're trying to do, but I felt as an MCU fan, I felt shorthanded.
Right, and I think rightfully so.
I mean, there as far as the issues of loss and being feeling like a soldier outside of war and such, that I felt like there were things they could have played off with Karen and the Punisher and the loss of Daredevil. Besides some nuns, everybody thinks he's dead, and I thought that was an opportunity to play into that a bit, as at least as far as another character the character that brought these two together, it's not even touched.
Yeah, and I think even then that sort of leaves some interpretation, some room to question timeline. I mean, you make that important point about...
there's no question of timeline. They openly say that it's the middle of November in several cases.
Right.
In fact, it ends on Thanksgiving.
Did they list the year?
No, but I don't think they need to.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. That's sort of why I question. I'm really not certain how much this builds post Daredevil, post everything else. I'm really seeing this as something outside of it. And honestly, I could be wrong, but
if this was something that happened before the Defenders, and don't you think that Karen Page would have called upon the Punisher to help?
I wonder. See, we've got this history of her knowing about him. Obviously, she directly played a part in his case, in his initial acquittal and everything, knowing about him. If anything, most of her dialogue, her narrative was so centered around him. I'd almost expect sort of a back reference to Daredevil if that was.
Well, no, yeah, I'm not expecting anything else. But I mean, besides the besides the Defenders, that's all they ever do in this show.
Right.
Is kind of basically backhanded references and such.
Exactly.
Again, I'm not expecting anything else, but we didn't get any.
We didn't, which really leads me to believe that, just to assume we don't have that. There's not that post time frame doesn't exist. I don't think it's hard to say that. It's really hard to say that here.
I disagree. I think we're well into mid-November 2017.
Gotcha. Since when did we... Okay. Because I'm trying to think back to Luke Cage and the rest of how closely we followed our current year timeline.
Generally, these shows do, as in with most of the movies, not all of them, most of the movies and the shows, they are happening around the time that they come out.
Fair enough.
Well, I got nothing else to say unless I can start spoiling stuff. I guess overall, if you're a big Punisher fan and you're expecting to see the Punisher from the comics, which you're not going to completely get in full Punisher mode anyways,
right?
This is a shadow of the character,
right?
The conversations between the Punisher and Micro initially, I think their initial interactions were great.
Yeah.
I think the first 4 or 5 episodes of the season were really building up towards something really good. And then somewhere about halfway through, about after episode 5, it almost feels to me, while it is well hidden, it feels to me like someone else got control of the show and said, like, you can't do all of that Punisher stuff in the Punisher show. No, let's focus more on everything else that no one wanted to see. That's what it feels like to me. And I can't say anything else unless going into spoilers. So
that's a segue if I ever heard it.
I'm ready to rate if you are.
Yeah. Out of guns, out of knives, what's our metric?
Let's go out of guns, I guess. But even our ratings will have more than the Punisher did.
It's true. Let's see. If I was to take this out of, let's go with guns. I'll take this out of loaded pistols. Man. I'm gonna have to go. There's a few things that have to grow on me about this, I think, but I'm gonna go with despite the things I enjoyed in the narration, this part of the themes and walking through that, maybe I should have divided this up a little bit too instead of chunking through all of it at once. But that's going to come down to 6.8 for me.
A 6 point? You can't do 0.8.
Yeah, I can. We do 0.5s all the time.
A 6.8. I'm giving it a 4.
Fair enough.
And I would give it a lot less, except for the fact that what was in this show was good.
Right.
But it wasn't a Punisher show.
Right.
And that's why it's a 4. And it would be a 2 or a 3 otherwise. But what was in this show was good. But it wasn't the Punisher.
You could do, I think what was the grounds that were accomplished here, you could do that without the Punisher title with it.
You don't need, this isn't a Punisher show. This is not a Punisher TV show.
Right.
This could have been something that Netflix just put out. Right. And you would have been just fine.
Well, and that points to the whole kind of like the CSI thing that I pointed out. I mean, that's really sort of what I felt like I was watching an extended version of. But
are we in spoilers?
We're in spoiler territory.
Okay. All right. Couple things right off the bat. Right off the fucking bat. Yeah, because I'm going to get fired up. You do not have the Punisher fill a wall full of weapons and have him use maybe 3 of them throughout the whole show. Problem 1. Problem 2. The Punisher is to never go and play football in the show. He's playing football with a preteen kid.
Yeah.
What? What? What?
What from all the previous Punisher stuff you've seen before, I guess makes that an anomaly.
Because the Punisher doesn't throw the ball around.
I gotcha.
He doesn't do that. He's so disconnected.
Yeah.
That he does. That is the general problem here. Is that this is a Punisher that starts out the way he should. I mean, the beginning I thought was great, especially when he wraps up what he was working on.
Yep.
And then he's done. And at first I'm kind of pissed about that. I'm like, you know what? Okay, no, I get it. They're telling a different story here. And then they even started out this is an angry man who is filled with nothing but rage. And to distract himself, he literally busts down walls for a living all day and night. That's his job. He's just surviving. He's just this ball of rage that has no focus. He's decided not to be the Punisher anymore. That was perfect.
Mm.
But then as he gets now, does it make any sense that he gets into this world again, where he's going to kill people, where Micro's getting the information, getting him this, getting him that he's less angry?
I think the rage is there for sure. I just think the amount he disconnects. Let's play with that a minute. Let's say we run with where episode 1 and 2, maybe even 3 based us. I mean, at that point, we're still dealing with the complete ball of rage, throwing crooks into cement mixers, all that good stuff. If we were to run with those themes, could we have had a better story, you think?
If what?
If we were just to run, like, take all the sentimental out, take all the empathy out, take all the really trying to square what's happening with him, e.g., he loses his entire family. He sees a chance to do something, to apply himself, doesn't want to see another family lost or a way to use his skills. Take that out of it. And if we just put this on nailing crooks, could we have, I guess, could you think we could have had more as cohesive a story, or more or less, or not?
I'm still not totally understanding what you're saying here. This show lacks the context of the main character.
Right.
It's just that simple. I mean, he wears the Punisher skull 3 times.
Right.
Once right at the beginning, 2 near the end, 1 at the very end, and then 1 near the end. And I'm sorry, something you don't do with the Punisher, also, besides play football, besides have him put an arsenal up on a wall and then never have him use even a quarter of it, besides those things, you do not end that show with a happy ending. What? It's all right. You're Pete. What's his fuck again? And you're a free man again. What?
Right. It's always it's the road. It's always what goes on. What continues from there.
This man is a mass murdering psychopath who just so happens to only be guided by good values.
Yeah, I just don't see how
you don't end him sitting there all chuckling and chit chatting with government officials in a hospital room. So you're a free man again, Frank. What?
I have trouble seeing how we'd square the mass murder though without something like as a guiding principle. As you said, he's got his code. He's got something that he follows, and I think that's at very much. Maybe this is why I never, I guess, followed Punisher closely. It always felt that if adhered to the T, there's a very mechanical element in that. Mm-hmm. To the character. I think if too doggedly adhered to, it's sort of
he's dull and he's bland.
Yeah, you sort of march through.
And he's simple.
Right.
And there's very few things that make him complicated.
Right.
But this is why, I mean, when we saw the first trailer for this, what was it, dude? It was all about guns. It was about the Punisher being the Punisher, punishing people.
Yep.
Is that what we got?
No, we went way beyond that. I mean,
I felt misled. I felt very much bait and switch, and I felt misled.
Interesting. His execution of his code was more of the end game, to the accessory to the rest of the story that was formed.
They were building up a lot of what I thought initially they were doing a lot to build up what makes this character the way he is. And again, putting him in this world, like they were constantly showing him waking up. He never wakes up right. He always wakes up coming from a nightmare that his family is being killed. And then they just stopped that.
Right.
The paranoia and the aggression that was shown with his initial communications and interactions with Micro were brilliant and perfect. And then they just kind of stopped that.
Yeah, I was pointing out that narrative device that was pretty good. Because, see, there's an I Am Legend vibe as we're marching through the story, especially for like the early portions. You have these flashes of the murder of his family. And we get a little bit more of it each time. We sort of enter his mind and see, dream sequence. And I was expecting, all right, this is going to play out eventually. We'll see the full scene. I mean, we're going to piece that together. But that only went to a point, stopped. And then
it just stopped.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I think like episode 9, 10 or later or whatever, where that actually picked back up and we started building that again. But even when that happened, that was disjointed and fragmented. And we had the paranoia blur. There was also that weird flashback sequence of like the double Thanksgiving with his family mixed up with Micro's family, and the rest there. And then that was stirred up. So
that was garbage.
I didn't like that. Because I think they had a strong enough case.
That's about the point where the show took a really weird turn.
Yeah. They had a strong enough case, I think, going with what they were building up front to really just let that play out. Let us show us where that goes. But
Frank Castle is an animal.
Yeah,
he's an animal, and he was.
Yeah,
and then he wasn't, and there's no justifiable reason that he changed. If anything, the fact that he's getting back into this world and doing these things again would have made him more of an animal. And they play that up a bit too when he gets all pissed at Micro for screwing up getting him guns.
Right.
And he's being just a dick about it.
Yeah.
and it's like it all comes off really well, and it all seems appropriate for the characters that we have, and then it's just not anymore.
Right.
And we see a lot. I knew we were going to get a lot of stuff with side characters, and it was done well enough. The stuff with Jigsaw and what's her name, Dana.
Yeah.
That stuff was fine and good. It was a little more than I was hoping to get, but there was no reason that William Russo turns the Jigsaw at the end. We should have seen that happen a couple episodes prior and actually have him fight at least some kind of villain.
Right.
I don't know how many people actually know that that's actually Jigsaw. Did you know that was Jigsaw?
I did not.
Yeah, which had no. He was if I remember correctly, he was a mafia boss. He was never part of the military or anything, from what I remember in the past. But yeah, this was, again, for the context of this show being a show.
Yeah,
you're okay. For the context of this show being a Marvel's Punisher show, they failed.
Right.
They missed the mark. And, I thought when I saw the trailers for this that they got it, and they didn't. They failed like everyone else has failed to do a Punisher project.
Yeah, call me the oddball. I felt, again, that I didn't have enough of a foundation to come back to sort of base things, that I really let the case, the whole the FBI investigation, the corrupt CIA operatives, the corrupt Homeland Security issues, and all that, letting that whole scenario play out. But I mean, again, that's something that you could easily have happen in like a CSI show or whatever else. But
right.
That's really, that's really what I got into and ran with. Honestly, it's harder for me to square, I think, more of his motivations with like something else beyond that, besides just ultra violence, like in slamming the bad guys. Now, maybe if you had something like where he went up against Kingpin, because I think he,
well, he met Kingpin in Daredevil season 2,
right? And then I was thinking more back to the comics. Didn't he killed Kingpin? I forget which arc that was.
Oh, I don't know. He's still alive now, so whatever happened there,
right? In the current stuff, it was some side story. I forget what it was, but he did, and then he died too. But regardless, that's sort of another spinoff. So really, yeah, this is one that is much more of a piecing together a huge sprawling investigation. You go into the infighting between government branches, the infighting between LAPD and offices and whatnot. And honestly, when we're not down in the bunker watching Punisher's next move, we're really in government offices. We're in police.
Right.
We're in police vicinity. We're in police quarters. We're piecing together a case. We're walking through that. And so again,
not one
right.
reference towards S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
None.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about covert ops and dirty government officials and everything that's happened with the S.H.I.E.L.D. in the MCU. Not one word about it. That's something we talked about in the past, how they were going to handle it. They failed.
That's what grounds it so much, I think, in the whole cop appeal. When you talk Marvel, you're free to escalate beyond, I think, just police, just cops. Like you're going to have cops regardless of any live action show or whatever else you have. Like that's a given. That's something known. One of the things that makes Marvel really fun is all of these groups that interact alongside law enforcement. You got the NYPD, the LAPD, but then you're going to have, as you said, S.H.I.E.L.D., but then you're going to have something weird like Hydra in the background. Then there's some kind of X factor that throws a hand grenade into the mix to make that compelling and bring, I guess, like the hero angle in, which we don't get.
Yeah, we don't. And one of the things that and again, it feels like they're kind of building up to this. It feels like they're giving you a contrast between Frank Castle and Louis Wilcott,
right?
Who you can tell inevitably is going to become a conflict with them,
right?
And they're not giving you a night and day contrast, but they are giving you contrast of two people who have come back from wars, who are dealing with these issues that they have. Right. One having PTSD issues directly from his time serving, whereas Frank Castle is dealing with PTSD from his family being murdered. Mm-hmm. You have a contrast here, and it's not a direct one. They're not necessarily telling a narrative between the two, but they take it to the point where I think they will, where they actually do come with the definition that they are very similar.
Right.
But what makes them different, and what makes them different is how they're hardwired, how these individuals are wired. I mean, because they are both vigilantes, and the Punisher's supposed to be a vigilante. He's not, but you accept it for what it is, and you have the contrast there, and then the narrative could have been the difference is understanding right and wrong as far as the definitions when it comes to civilians and how you approach things, and they missed it.
Let me ask this.
This was a swing and a miss. They touched it at the very end, and then the dude blows himself up, and he's like, "All right, on to the next thing."
You say he's not a vigilante in this. Do you think that's more
barely.
Because of the? Yeah, I say he is, but do you believe that's more because of you have so much more of a co-op piece with the police, with the government, and everything?
It's because so much of the story and what he's doing is focused on him,
right?
And his past. I understood and I knew that most of this show was going to be about him getting revenge or punishment for things that had been done to him directly. But there really is there really is nothing beyond that. There's very, very little beyond what the Punisher does outside of dealing with his own issues, most of which is not even most of which, none of which is ever throwing around the old pigskin or fixing someone's headlight. This character is so off base of where he should be. It's so disappointing. And I honestly, I'm going to be quite honest here. I don't know how many people are going to hear this. Probably never. Probably most people won't ever hear this. But I feel that most people who are reviewing this show are either their understanding of the character is too light for them to understand how off kilter this was from where it should have been, or they're afraid to say something because they feel that this show is tackling something more important with the character. In which cases, I'm all fine with what they were trying to do with the show besides that, but you do not take away from what this is.
My fear is even if you come in with a very strong understanding of just how off base this guy is, and we again, going back to an earlier point, take away the sentimentality and, really focus that more on him killing who he deems necessary and really thinning out the rest, looking at him square in the camera, really taking a lot of the investigative element out, focusing more on that vigilante angle. I wonder what we'd have to run with each episode. I mean,
Punisher punishing bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a murder spree, and
that's what he is.
Yeah,
that's what the trailer said we were going to get.
But that would wear me like 13 episodes.
Which is why you don't do that for 13 episodes, because you still have which is the primary story of him dealing with the rest of the people that have wronged him, that were responsible for killing his family, for dealing with Micro and the issues he has with that, beyond going over and eating dinner with his family.
Right.
But the fact is, this was so the whole focus was on him, when outside of the vast majority of the Punisher is in what he does has very little to do with him. What has happened to him has defined who he is, but it does not define what he does. And do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's an element of projection that's going on, though.
Well, and this is why I don't call him a vigilante, because
I see
there's nothing that he does in this show as far as killing people or doing any of that or going after others that doesn't have to do with him.
Right.
He's not going out for punishment. He's not going out for justice. He's going out for revenge for himself.
Ultimately is what it loops back to. I think you can sugarcoat or read into his interactions with Micro's family as, doing the noble thing to, stick your neck out for someone else's family. You don't want to see it. But, the end of the day, he's looking back at a trauma that was inflicted on him. and he, seeing reflections of that, he goes and takes, actions that he deems necessary. It comes back to him in the end. I didn't feel any of those acts were like just for the sake of being a good Samaritan, or like, just pulling.
Well, it's not even so much about being a good Samaritan either. He doesn't care too much about being a good Samaritan. In fact, he doesn't really at all. He understands that in the toolbox, in the grand scheme of things, in the toolbox of making things right in society, he's the hammer and he's the frickin' nail gun.
Yep.
He understands that.
Right.
And whether you agree with that or not, that's how he sees it. That is not what you get in this show. Mm-hmm. Instead, you get him throwing footballs, fixing headlights, and again, the ending. The ending was ridiculous.
I have less of a problem with the headlights in football because I didn't read that as a super mushy, just soft thing. Because
it's just not him.
I get you. That's fair. I think the ending is more the thing to seize on, with sort of this reset button again. He's not the type that is, now, from what I do know, I will agree with this. He is not the type that's redemptive enough to sort of walk into it and then just walk away again. There isn't an end. Rachel asks him about this earlier in the series, about the amount of rage he has. Where does it stop? And he acknowledges the sort of the nonsense about it, that there is no end game. Yeah, I kill these guys and it goes on. I'm not planning a path like that. But that's the point of Punisher. What makes him such a chaotic character? It goes on. It doesn't stop. Like there's always going to be someone or something else or something for him to lash out at, and we don't have that in the end.
Do we have that anywhere?
Yes.
You think so?
I'd say so. Well, okay, you were framed against the backdrop of his everything that happened to him initially with Operation Cerberus, but and of course the fallout from the murder of his family. All right, he walks through that. That door's done by the time we hit episode 1. Going into the rest of the series, he's looking at these corrupt officials, as he said to Rachel, those who decide what truth is. So it becomes, I think, less of a microcosm of him. Okay, I'm dealing with these atrocities happen to my family. Now he's looking at, all right, this happened to my family because there are these guys that decide what truth is. They gotta die. And I think it's him taking that to the next level and going there with what he believes his code should line up with.
Fair enough. I can maybe see how this how this intertwines. I can see how you're seeing that. I think the problem is that we don't see enough of who the Punisher is outside of his own issues for me to grasp if what we were seeing was just because it's a personal vendetta or not. This was so focused on it being so personal for him that we never actually see him do anything that is the Punisher outside of that context. Mm-hmm. So you're saying, well, that doesn't necessarily mean he wouldn't have done that outside of that context. I think from the overarching story that we got, and just how much he just wasn't the animal that we're used to seeing. I got the influence of, well, he's only doing these things because it is personal for him. So I guess it's a matter of perspective, but I guess I can understand where you can come from either perspective on that.
Sure, and it seizes on something key ultimately, where we have that chaotic part, the slightly more chaotic element of his character. It's there, but it's not. It's there in the sense of the radical degree that he responds to this stuff, what he chooses to do. It's not there in the sense that at the end of all of it, when he comes to his end game, he doesn't have just a complete sense of chaos about it. This Punisher stops short a lot. It really seems, if anything, that he has this moral standing about, I'm going to do what I believe is right, and this is the moral thing in this situation.
Which is, by the way, very different from the character that we get in Daredevil Season 2.
Right. I think that's really important to punctuate. It's sort of like a semi-truck in Stop and Go. The Punisher, I think we're accustomed to seeing, that you usually see in the comics, is there is no stop and go. There is hit the hammer and the accelerator, you barrel through every obstruction, and you keep going, and you don't stop. Right. Like there's no reflecting. There's
and we didn't get that at all.
That we didn't have. I will agree with that.
No, and that's that's like the most defining part. That's why that character, outside of his knowledge and his expertise in combat, is why he's able to stand up against superhuman villains,
right,
and even heroes, is because he's so, he's not a 3-dimensional character. He is a 1-dimensional character,
right,
but he's so good at that 1 dimension.
Yeah.
And it's just not here. I get it. They swung and they missed. This is a swing and a miss on this.
Character-wise, the build-up, focusing on we talked about Rachel and Micro and his family and a few of the others. Looking at his build-up to the showdown with Billy. Honestly, Billy, this is someone I expected him to honestly roast a little earlier on. I guess carrying a quote-unquote villain, he didn't feel as much as one. I mean, this is someone who did what he did for the sake of ambition. Everything was to take the next step in the corporate or governmental ladder. The more of the villain in this was Agent Orange, if you ask me. The absolutely nut job CIA corrupt operative. Mm-hmm. And that's honestly where I felt we sort of stopped with the whole villain. Like, Billy, he's sort of there, but I mean, he's been hackneyed and tossed around as such an accessory, like, by the end of the story. It's just sort of like, all right, like, if he gets off, so be it. If he doesn't, whatever. I felt,
he's an idiot. It's hard to back him up even as a villain. He's just such a dumbass. He's the one that let Frank get loose.
Yeah. And
that's your own damn fault.
Yeah. I think
you deserve it at this point.
I agree. I think we could have stopped with honestly dealing with the Agent Orange and calling it a day, but that's really all we had to work with in that context. But looking at those characters, looking at the way they played, I mean, as far as just their parts and acting, hey, carried well. I think for the roles,
yeah, like I said, the foundation of this show is solid.
Yeah.
From top to bottom. It's just missing the most important part.
The punishment.
The Punisher. Missing the Punisher. They got some other guy here.
Right.
Which is a shame because John Barenthal plays an awesome Punisher.
Yes, he does.
You do get to see it for brief moments. You get to see it. Maybe, I'm sure that he'll do a season 2. Because for some reason a lot of people liked this.
Right.
I just, for me it's like, look, bravo for trying.
Right.
For going where few have gone and have failed before. The Punisher movie that came out was 2006. That's the closest we've gotten. That was pretty good. Yeah. But you're in the pile. You're in the shit pile with all the other ones. You have a failed version of the Punisher on your hands.
The applause is, as you said, the themes that are approached. The worry here is, okay, you can build a compelling narrative, compelling story that draws people into the whole crime investigation, the vigilante responses to that, so on and so forth. Okay, but when the rubber hits the road and we start getting to the point where now we have that direct correlation tie-in to Marvel, where we bring things back to that. I think there's going to be a clash here that we're building. If we're establishing now that Punisher is this kind of more extended CSI story, and then let's just say in the future we have something that brings, we come way closer to where we actually are at standing in comics. That's going to be a collision because it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was a story about X, or just toss any formula crime investigation here, and here we go, with vigilantes. Whereas now if you start building in more of the actual comic and Marvel formula, that can be a little off-putting. So part of the danger, the risk and reward of introducing characters like this and really giving them their own standalone stories. On the one hand, you have a chance to introduce your audience in full, to bring them into this world, to show them this character and how they interact with that world at large. If you show that character and sort of take out the interactions at large, we're creating more of a distance in the comic space with things. You told a story, that's fine, but that's some of the concern I have going forward.
Right, well, and this is what makes the Punisher weaker. Again, and I referenced this before, part of what makes the Punisher so stronger, and so much stronger than most non-superpowered heroes is the fact that he stands up against superpowered heroes and villains.
Yep.
In the fact that he will rarely even flinch when
Right.
doing so. This is part of what makes him so powerful.
Right.
And you've distanced himself from that world so much that it just took a lot of his power away.
Right.
I'm going to be very honest with you. I mean, with the last, I thought the Defenders was fine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people weren't happy with Iron Fist, although I disagree with some of the reasons for that. Overall, I see what they're saying. This one has shaken the credibility that I feel that Netflix has as far as what they do with these Marvel TV shows.
Right.
I do not have the same amount of faith and trust in them that I did, and it was pretty high. And,
right.
It got to the point where it was like, well, where does it end? It ended right here. And they've got a long ways to go before they get that kind of credibility again. This is not easy. This is not an easy character.
No.
And there's a lot of reasons why people don't take him on. And again, like I said, despite your effort, despite what may have been right and good about this show, you missed it. And you missed it pretty bad when it came to the character, and you came to establishing him in this MCU. You missed it, and as far as I'm concerned, I question what you do now. I don't have the faith in you as a production studio as I used to.
You heard it here.
It was that bad.
You heard it here. The one olive branch before we wrap up that I'm gonna throw out there about this. And the one thing that I might see, as a saving grace, this is nothing guaranteed. It seems that you only see steps this bold when you're preparing to sort of write your own universe, to really redefine how the players in this universe roll out, how the organizations that you might realize or recognize rather from other groups or other comics you've read or whatever else, how they all fall into place, like dominoes, S.H.I.E.L.D., whatever else you want to call it. While we have no signs of building towards that in this. If we did, I think that would be sort of hope of an interesting direction. Maybe this is just a huge foundational exercise, and if they do a season 2 or something, maybe you'll actually get into that more. If they do choose to do a season 2, and if we went back into investigation territory, I think we've completely lost it.
Here's the thing. Here's what I need if they do season 2.
Yeah.
Here's what I need. I need them, because I'm going to need a bold statement from them to correct this for me. Kill Micro's family off right away. You have to. The whole fact that they are not a team at the end of this movie is disgusting. Right. It's disgusting. We go through all of that. Look, everybody's alive and hugging and what? This is the Punisher. What? And he's a free man? Oh my God, there's somebody really handed this off to the wrong people. They really did. But if they can do that, and in the trailer for season 2, I see the Punisher actually taking on an actual supervillain.
Right.
Okay, I will jump back on board for season 2. Or they actually do, and they could do this as well in the same trailer, or they could just put him in the freaking War Machine armor. I'll jump back on board for that too.
All right.
Which I really don't think is going to happen. But if they did that, that has the same effect. That firmly plants Frank Castle, this Punisher, in the MCU if they put the War Machine armor on him.
Right.
So that has the same effect. So, but we won't see either.
I don't think you can count on seeing that, honestly.
No, we won't see any of that. So this is a shame. I really I think that this is the beginning of bad things.
All right. There you have it, folks.
And I'm never wrong about any of this stuff. I wish I was, but I'm. And I don't care. I don't care if I'm the one person who does reviews on these things. I'm the one person sticking my finger at this TV show, I'm fine with that. I feel completely justified in my reasons. If you feel I am wrong and why, please comment or email. I definitely would like to know. I mean, I am not an avid Punisher follower. I did
Really?
I did follow one of his runs, which ran for years. He's not even in my top 10 favorite Marvel characters, but I've always admired the character, especially when people do it right. I admire how they do that because, again, as one-dimensional as he is, he's not easy. He's probably one of the hardest characters to get down in the MCU, and I'm not talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean the Marvel Universe.
Right.
He's not, much like the character, he's not to be trifled with. And when you do it wrong, it shows.
There you have it. If you got thoughts, did you like it? Did you not like it? Do we have enough to work with here or not? Hey, by all means, we'd love to hear from you. Toss us a line, throw us an email, or leave a comment. Of course, stay tuned for other upcoming reviews we've got. We've still got Star Wars. It's going to be next month. A whole lot more movie-wise, and hopefully some more happening on the show front. But until then, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
See you later.
Hey people, thank you for tuning into this episode and taking a listen. If you like our content, if you like what you're listening to, if there's anything we go over, hey, please, we would not only love to hear more from you, but if great, if you could throw some support, you can subscribe right below. Also, you can toss us a line anytime. That's ksawmedia@gmail.com. Of course, you can tune in for our channel anytime for movie reviews, game reviews, a lot of random wacky stuff. Who knows what you'll hear. And of course, our episode each week where we're bringing the nerdiest things we can find, pick up, and maybe not find. Maybe the stuff that just drops in our laps. But anyway, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We hope to hear from you again later. Take care.